This happened when I was attending a technical school. At the time, I was living with my boyfriend, and it was the weekend, so we decided to go out for a bit. I looked everywhere for my phone first, but I couldn't find it anywhere. "Hey, could you try ringing it? Then we can follow the sound," I asked him. He rang it, and I could hear it ringing somewhere in the house. "Oh, the closet," I thought. I opened the door and, after a little searching, found it in the pocket of my jacket. I normally didn't use my pockets, but sometimes I did put my phone in there. For some reason, I forgot. "Found it, thank you," I said. But as soon as my phone stopped ringing, I heard my boyfriend say something. "Ah, sorry, wrong number. My bad." "Eh?" I thought, and then he hung up. "I accidentally called some old guy," he said. Hang on, didn't he just call my phone? We both checked our call histories, and there it was, right there on both our phones. I had him call my phone again to check. Of course, my phone rang, and of course, the person who answered was me. But I'm telling you, it was some guy, and he was like, "Who's this?" When I apologized, he just said, "Yeah." Was it possible to call a number but get put through to someone else? I asked a friend who knew a lot about this sort of stuff, but they said it wasn't possible. That was what I thought as well. I wondered if maybe my boyfriend was playing a trick on me, but he wasn't that type of person. He looked pale and shaken after that, and even a little withdrawn, so I think he really did speak to someone else. And if so, who on earth did he speak to? That boyfriend is my husband now, and we still talk about that strange day every now and then. But ever since then, if my husband needs to contact me, he always sends a message and never calls. Hey guys, I'm your host, Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to this week's episode of Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. The latest volume of Kowabana, Volume 16, is now available. If you want even more creepy tales of ghosts, haunted buildings, curses, mysterious rituals, and much more, make sure to check it out right now. And if you're looking for more to listen to, you can also find the audiobook for Kijo, Japan's most notorious female criminals, either on our Patreon, Fourth Wall Store, or various audiobook outlets, including Spotify and Audible. So don't miss out on that either if you're still looking for more. This week, we're looking at some tales of nightmarish encounters and happenings that are often incredibly difficult to explain. First up, a young man has spent his entire life around people who apparently have a strong sixth sense. But why do they keep finding him? And what is it that attracts not just them, but apparently spirits to him? Find out in Parasites. I'm sorry if this isn't so scary. Some things have been bothering me for a while, so I'd like to talk about them. I loved all things scary when I was a kid, and at the library, I always read all the scary books, like Japanese folklore and fairy tales from around the world. I was raised in the countryside in Shikoku, so my playgrounds were shrines and old burial mounds. They were like small hills with an opening halfway up, and inside you could find what they enshrined there. They were also used as air raid shelters during the war as well. Anyway, maybe I was reckless or perhaps just stupid, but I used to mess around in these places on the daily. Basically, I loved scary things, but I had no sixth sense whatsoever. However, despite my lack of spiritual senses, for some reason, I was always surrounded by people with an incredibly strong sixth sense. When I was in elementary school, I had a classmate by the name of A-chan, whose spiritual senses were off the charts. During the war, our school was used as a garrison, and there was a large military cemetery next to it. So A-chan apparently often saw the spirits of soldiers and children all around the place. I didn't really believe her and thought she was just really good at making up stories. But the strength of her abilities were proven by some photos taken on our school trip. All the photos she appeared in were really strange. There was this red aura, which was kinda cute, but in one photo that was supposed to be of A-chan alone, her right leg was missing, and in another one, her head was gone. But after that school trip, A-chan started avoiding me for some reason. I didn't remember being mean to her or anything, so one day I asked her close friend B-chan about it. "She said the photos from our trip were your fault," B-chan replied with a troubled look on her face. "What do you mean?" "She said that all the photos taken with or near you were weird. Even at school now, if she's near you, she says she always sees strange things." Looking closer at our group photo, and the photos of us playing games, it was true that numerous photos with me in them had these bands of red light across them. And according to A-chan, even in the photos I didn't appear in, I was still nearby when they were taken. Upset, I ran over to A-chan, ignoring B-chan as she tried to stop me. "Who do you think you are, talking behind my back and making stuff up?" A-chan looked surprised when she saw me, but before long, she started acting strange. Her eyes went round like saucers, and her whole body started to tremble. Then she screamed and started crying. A teacher who heard her cries took her out of the classroom, and I got in trouble for being mean to her. And for the next month, A-chan didn't come back to school. When I was at a training camp during the second grade of junior high, a girl from the neighbouring class started crying that she'd seen the spirit of a man covered in blood. And when we went on our school trip to Nagasaki in the third grade, the teacher and several students from my class started vomiting and passing out at the A-bomb museum. When we visited Hiroshima during the second grade of high school, the window in the dining room of the inn suddenly shattered, and the bus got a flat tire. It seemed whenever I attended group events, bad things followed. I started living alone in Osaka when I began university, and there I met Mus-san, a guy who was struggling to break out as a manzai comedian. He couldn't even earn enough for daily necessities, so he worked nights at the counter of an izakaya bar to make ends meet. I was a little embarrassed about my own dreams at the time, and I was also busy with part-time work so I could pay for my own university and living expenses. But because I could get cheap, delicious food from Mus-san even late into the night, I often visited him and chatted with him about my silly dreams and laughed at his funny stories. Every now and then, Mus-san would give me a few solid thwacks on my back. I didn't normally enjoy that sort of thing, but for some reason, whenever he did it, my back felt warmer and lighter than it was before. "Hey Mus-san, why do you always do that?" "Ah, this," he said, grinning as he grilled some fish. "You're always carrying so much on your back. I'm just helping you get rid of some of it." Carrying stuff on my back? Like stress, pressure, and exhaustion, I thought as I ate the fish. If you let yourself get too weak, you might find yourself carrying something you can no longer handle, he said with a straight face. I thought he was warning me not to push myself too hard, and honestly, I was a little moved that he seemed to care about me that much. One day, another part-timer from work invited me to go out and eat with him. He didn't usually hang out with us other workers, so I was surprised. But I had no reason to say no. So we visited an izakaya bar together. We didn't really know much about each other, so after some brief introductory talk, we ordered a few dishes and then he started talking. I don't really like going out to eat with people. Do you know why? He asked. Huh? No. Why? Like, say that 3 of us go to a bar, right? But I'm the only one that can see there are more than 3 of us. Right. Was he gonna try and sell me some snake oil or something? I was starting to regret agreeing to his invitation and was honestly a little fed up. Most people don't believe me though, and it's exhausting for me to see these things as well, so I don't really talk about it much. He smiled, like he knew exactly what I was thinking. But either way, I'm still gonna say it. Minato-san, you bring way too many different things with you each and every day. What the hell was he going on about? As I remained silent, he then quietly continued. Minato-san, so many things come and go from you, almost like parasitic plants. That alone isn't exactly a problem, but it seems like you yourself can't see them, so you don't pay any attention to them at all. Seemed he wasn't a drinker, as he took another sip of his oolong tea, and then continued. But sometimes there are things so powerful attached to you that even just being in the same room as you is painful. I can't just keep ignoring it. I think you should see someone who specializes in dealing with this sort of thing. I was dumbfounded, and I couldn't help but feel like he was telling me I was crazy in a roundabout way. I don't need to go to the hospital, I screamed, but my colleague didn't even flinch. I know you might not believe me, but if things continue like this, then someday it might cause real harm to you. Sometimes I can feel a warm air around you, like when we're doing overtime late at night. Is there someone who has been giving you advice? That person is so worried about you that they've been looking out for you from afar. Mus-san. Suddenly, his face appeared in my mind. I grabbed my colleague and we immediately headed over to Mus-san's bar. I hadn't seen him for a while, and seeing him now, he looked incredibly run down. "You're late," he'd always say whenever he saw me with a straight face. On this night, we happened to be the only 3 people in the bar, and it was the first time I'd ever seen Mus-san looking like that. "Ah, Minato-san, this is him," my colleague whispered, and then he briefly explained why we were there. Mus-san showed us to a seat at the counter, then he started whipping up some food as he spoke. "You see, I've always been able to see ghosts, and I can even get rid of the smaller ones. I've often done it for you, right? Hitting your back and such. For some reason, that makes them go away. I'm self-taught, so I don't really understand the hows or whys though." I remembered his warm touch. "The first time you came here honestly scared the crap out of me. There was this old guy, a kid, some dogs and cats, and other things I couldn't even make out on your back. Now, this is just my theory, but you seem to be the type of person who is rather inviting to such things. They're all attracted to you and then they go away. Kinda like parasitic plants. Maybe this is because of where you were born or your family or something. I don't really know much about these things. He said the same stuff that my colleague did. Another thing I discovered is that even though nothing seems to happen to you, it still affects those around you. There are lots of folks out there who have at least some sort of spirit sense, but when they're with you, it's amplified. And it's not just me and your colleague here, but I think this has affected all sorts of people around you who have been frightened by spirits too. A-chan in elementary school, my classmates in junior high, what happened when I was in high school. They're all no doubt related, Musan said simply. The problem is the thing hanging around you right now. Strange rumors are going to start spreading around you soon, and some people might fall ill, and perhaps someone might even see it. It's waiting. First, it's weakening those around you, making you tired of being around others and tired of work. It's calculating, and it's a nasty piece of work. I don't think it holds a grudge against you, but I don't know why it isn't leaving like the others have either. And I don't know what it wants. But either way, you summoned it. It felt like Musan was staring at something behind me, so I turned around before I could stop myself. But nothing was there. So, all those phone calls and messages you sent me were because... yeah, I've been feeling kinda uneasy lately. You've been appearing in my dreams, so I was worried. I didn't think that worry would even reach your colleague, though. Musan smiled as he looked at my colleague, but he just frowned and remained silent. If I can help you, I will. Come over to my place for a bit, Musan then said. This all ended as you might expect. Musan died. His Manzai partner said it was because he was struggling to come up with jokes, but everyone knew he wasn't the sort of person to end matters over something like that. And my colleague also quit, claiming he had severe depression. I tried calling his house once, but his mother just yelled at me. "This is all your fault!" A female co-worker then said she could hear strange sounds. Our security company changed. Our boss was involved in an accident. Another colleague applied for a transfer. A rumor started to spread. There's something strange in this company outing photo. But for some reason, nobody would show it to me. At the end of last year, my boss told me to take some time off. I couldn't recall making any mistakes at work, and I tried to argue with him about it, but he wouldn't listen. That's why I'm currently on leave and hanging around here on the internet. Even so, I still can't tell if there are things coming and going from me, or if that thing is still attached to my back. I just don't know. In this next story, a family gets a strange call one day when police discover their contact information amongst a dead man's belongings. But they have no idea who this man even is. So how does he know them, and why does he want people to contact them if he's dead? Find out in Posthumous Note. This must have happened around 30 years ago now. My husband and I had just started our married life together, and we were busy with our newborn child. Then, one day, I got a call from my mother who lived nearby. "I've got something I need to ask you." Apparently, the police had contacted her about something, and she wanted me to go with her to see them the following day. Seemed they had found a dead body with no ID, but amongst this man's personal belongings, they discovered a note mentioning my parents' address and contact details, and even our names. As such, they wished to talk to us about it. However, at that point, they were unable to contact a single one of our relatives, so there was a bit of confusion going on. At any rate, we agreed to go the following day with another close relative who lived nearby. When we got together the next day, what we saw was the body of a middle-aged man none of us knew. He must have been in his 50s or so, and we all checked his face and address, but sure enough, none of us knew who he was. Police believed he died of heart failure, and because he was found lying on his bed at home, they suspected it was a natural death and not something criminal. But there was not a single thing amongst his belongings that could identify him. Apparently, he had been using a false name, and he didn't have stable work, and he moved around a lot, so they had no idea who he was. The only thing they had to work off was an open notebook next to his bed that said, "Contact here," and listed my parents' address and all of our names. I had the police show me the notebook, and the cover had been painted entirely red, so I hesitated to take it from them. It was more than a little creepy. Nervous, I opened it, and just like they said, all of our names were in there, including mine. Thinking about how this person might know us made a chill run down my spine. It gave me the creeps, so I handed it back, decided to simply let them do their job, and then we left. Once the police were done with their investigations, they told us they were unable to find any connection between us and this total stranger. I have no idea what happened after that. The years flew by, and now I'm in my 50s. I had forgotten all about what I just told you now, but then one day, something made me remember it. Suddenly, that mysterious man appeared in my dreams. In this dream, I found myself in a barren room. There was only one door leading in and out, and to the rear of the room lay a motionless body. It was that mysterious man from that day so long ago. Creeped out, I tried to leave via the door, but it refused to open. As I was struggling with it, I then woke up. I've had that dream numerous times since then, and I noticed that it has been slightly changing as well. Every time I have that dream, the room gets smaller and smaller. And as it gets smaller, I get closer to that mysterious man. Now, he's so close that I can clearly see his face. It's so terrifying that I fear going to sleep each night. I tried talking to my family about it, but no one would give me the time of day because it was just a dream. Yeah, it's just a dream, but still. I cannot rid myself of this indescribable feeling of anxiety and foreboding. What will happen to me if I keep having this dream? I can't stop thinking about how that mysterious man might suddenly open his eyes and then chase after me. Who on earth is this man? And why am I the one being subjected to all of this? A group of university friends go mountain climbing one day when they're suddenly surrounded by fog. One of them falls, and although a search party is sent out, it appears he has simply disappeared off the face of the earth. But what really happened that day? Find out in The Missing Sea's Fate. Once I started university, I joined the mountaineering club because I loved the outdoors. There, I became friends with A, B, and C, who were all in the same grade as me. And even after we graduated, the four of us continued to hang out and take part in outdoor activities when we had the time. So, one summer, the four of us made our way to a somewhat steep mountain aimed at intermediate climbers. The plan was to spend the day climbing it. I hadn't been climbing for a while, but I wasn't worried. I was rather experienced, after all. However, sometimes problems arise no matter your skill level. This is nature, after all. Things were going well for the most part, but then disaster struck out of nowhere. An abrupt, thick fog suddenly enveloped us. A dangerous fog so thick that I couldn't even see my fingers if I extended my arm. We couldn't keep climbing through that. But then, the very next moment, suddenly someone screamed. Then, we heard someone sliding down the nearby slope. "Hey, are you okay?" Looking around, C was missing. It seemed he was the one who fell down the slope. I wanted to help him right away, but if we made one wrong move, we'd be joining him. All we could do was wait there for the fog to lift. How far did C fall? We screamed at the top of our lungs for him, but there was no reply. I prayed that he was okay. However, the fog hung around the entire night, and so the three of us had to sleep where we were. The weather cleared in the morning, but we had to look for C, so we couldn't exactly keep climbing. In the end, the three of us were unable to find him, so we went back down to get help. But no matter where anyone looked, we strangely could not find C at all. When we asked one of the search party members about it, he just said, "It's like he vanished into thin air." There was not a trace of him anywhere. It was a sudden slope, sure, but it wasn't ridiculously steep, so as long as he was going the right way, C should have been able to make it back in no time. And the sudden fog just didn't make any sense either. It had been great weather all day. 4 years passed after C's sudden disappearance. Considering how much time had passed, unfortunately, it didn't seem like C would ever return to us alive. We were unable to recover from the shock and sense of responsibility for his sudden disappearance, and for a while, I didn't go near any mountains again. But even so, those of us still here had to move on with our lives as well. However, we also wanted to at least find some sort of clue related to what happened to him. And so, we decided to once again step foot on that fateful mountain. That being said, numerous search parties had been sent out to find him, and none of them ever brought anything back. So it was unlikely this time would be different for us too. And, as expected, our desperate search didn't dig up a thing. Where on earth had C gone? Hey, what's that? We were having a rest on a ridge with a great view when A suddenly raised his voice. We turned to look in his direction, and something was moving slowly between the trees. It was a little too round and slow to be a bird. It kind of looked like a balloon, maybe. But all the way out here in the mountains? I grabbed my binoculars to check it out, but the moment I saw what it was like all the blood drained from my body, and I couldn't stop trembling. I tried to tell the others, but I could barely squeeze the words out. C's head. A and B also checked, and then all the colour drained from their faces. They stared at each other in silence. No doubt about it. That was C. It sounds crazy, but C's head was floating in the air, sliding around as it moved. There was no expression on his face, and his eyes were vacant, like there was no life or spirit in him. And it wasn't that his face was pale, but rather, it was completely ashen in colour. Was this a ghost? Or a monster? Either way, C was no longer human. That was the only thing we were sure of. We were so frightened that we were in no mood to continue the search. Instead, we rushed back down the mountain. I was worried that C's head might chase us for a while, but we made it back without issue. And the three of us convinced ourselves that what we saw that day was just a terrible hallucination. What did we really see that day? And where on earth is C's body? The young woman in this next story has a habit of yelling at any potential intruders whenever she gets home, in the hopes of scaring them away, even though her apartment is always empty. But is it really as empty as it seems? And should she even be doing this in the first place? Find out in The Forbidden Summoning Ritual. Our world is fraught with danger, right? Tomorrow, something bad might happen to me. I couldn't carry on like bad things only happen to other people, so I took great care when I lived alone. Whenever I got home to my empty apartment, I always made sure the first thing I did was yell once I got inside. "Come out right now! I know you're in there!" I'd scream stuff like that, trying to threaten any potential intruders, and I made it a habit of checking every nook and cranny too. Looking back on it now, it was a little ridiculous, but I was entirely serious about it at the time. One day, I went to hang out with a colleague I'd gotten close to at work. I wanted to return home for a moment first, so I asked her if she wanted to drop by and get ready there. And, because I was with someone, I didn't have to be worried about any intruders, so I didn't have to go around screaming and checking everything. Not to mention that doing that sort of thing in front of another person would be terribly embarrassing. But a short while after leaving, and once we'd started drinking and eating, my friend said something to me. "Hey, so look, it's a little weird for me to say this, but isn't the air in your apartment a little bad?" "Eh? Oh no. Does my apartment smell?" No, nothing like that. Just..." That was when I discovered that my colleague apparently had a sixth sense. And apparently, something was in my apartment. Well, I could have lived without knowing that. But it's more like... how can I put it? It's not a very strong presence, so I don't think you need to worry about it. It just made me curious, that's all. "Eh? Which is it then? But I've never noticed anything weird in my apartment." We talked about it for a while, and apparently my daily habit of calling out was not the best idea. Calling out to someone in an empty room was apparently a good way to summon spirits. Of course, for most people, this wasn't really a problem, but for people with a sixth sense, it was something they must never, ever do. A taboo, if you will. And although I didn't know it myself, apparently I had a sixth sense too. I've thought this for a while now, but you're always quite concerned about your apartment, aren't you? Oh, I guess. I'm always worried about whether I locked the door or whether I turned the lights off, that sort of thing. That might be because a ghost is calling to you. According to my friend, these types of worries were usually symptoms of OCD, but in my case, it might actually be because of a ghost. And in reality, I only developed these worries recently. They just came on suddenly, without any warning. Apparently, this was the influence of ghosts trying to draw us to them. I'd been wondering myself why I was suddenly so worried about things, so hearing that actually made me feel a little better. When I asked my friend what I should do about it, she gave a clear, straight answer. If you want to protect yourself, there's only one thing you can do. Get ripped. She pulled up her sleeve and then flexed her biceps. She was so muscular that it didn't even look like a woman's arm. Being that we worked in an office that didn't involve anything physical, it was even more surprising. And so, I started working out with her after that. Now, I can bench press 40 kilos, and I can squat 60 kilos. Building muscle has been more fun than I thought. My anxieties have faded away, and I feel more confident as well. I also feel more energetic in general. It made me realize just how important muscles really are. Maybe it's no longer a ghost that's possessing me, but rather weight training. A woman who hates hospitals is unfortunately admitted to one and left to spend her nights alone in her room. But is she really alone? Is something or someone nearby? And are they trying to help or harm her? Find out in Purring Sound. This is something I experienced while in the hospital. I got sick one day and had to be hospitalized. Resigning myself to my fate, I was admitted to the large general hospital nearby. At first, I was, of course, anxious, but the one thing I hated even more than hospitals was horror in general. The image I held in my mind of hospitals was that they were scary places, and that scared me even more than my illness. On the day I was admitted, I was taken to a room with just one other patient. She was a pleasantly chatty older woman, and I was incredibly relieved that I wasn't alone. I had nothing but time on my hands in the hospital, so chatting with her helped the time pass quickly. "I'm being discharged tomorrow. You take care now, okay?" she said. It was so sudden that I couldn't hide the surprise on my face. "Eh? You're leaving me here all alone?" She knew I was afraid of ghosts, and when I mentioned it again, she was like, "You'll be fine. There are no ghosts here." Still, her attempts at making me feel better didn't really calm my raging emotions. When will the next patient be arriving? I even asked the nurse, but she just laughed at me. All alone at night in the hospital. Would I be able to make it out to the other end alive? And so, my first night alone soon arrived. I was terrified of the dark and perhaps had too much energy left over from the day, so I found it hard to get to sleep. I debated whether I should call the nurse, even though I had no reason to. Anguished, I simply waited as time slowly passed. Goro goro. Goro goro. Huh? What was that noise? Something broke the silence and, going stiff, I listened more closely. Then it hit me. Huh! That's a cat purring! As soon as I realized it was the sound a relaxed cat makes, I found myself crying. My beloved cat passed away of old age the year before. His name was Kuro, and thinking that Kuro had come to save me, I found the courage to no longer be afraid. Kuro appeared every night until I was finally discharged, and it was thanks to him that I was safely able to leave. To change the subject for a moment, quite some time later, my grandfather fell seriously ill. He was rather elderly, so it wasn't entirely unexpected, and we all got together to spend perhaps our final days with him. It was then that I realized something. When my grandfather breathed, it made a sound just like a cat purring. Apparently, this was a rather common sound people made shortly before they passed away. If so, did that mean the sound I heard in the hospital was actually a person? If that were true, then who could have been making the sound? I was the only person in my room at the time. Honestly, it's all rather creepy, and even remembering it now sends chills down my spine. But perhaps it was a blessing in disguise that I thought it was actually Kuro while I was in the hospital, and not anything else. If I had known the other possibility, I don't think I would have been able to endure it. There's no way for me to confirm who or what was really making that sound, but I'd like to believe it was Kuro helping me out. It had to have been. And finally this week, a group of high school students visit an abandoned hotel to hang out, but while there, one of their friends suddenly goes missing. What really happened that night, and where did their friend go? Find out in There It Is. I'm not sure if this is something I should talk about, but I guess the statute of limitations should have run out by now. Over 10 years ago, when I was in the first grade of high school, I used to sneak into an abandoned building on the outskirts of town with some buddies to mess around with thinners. Some older students used to hang out there, but they kinda gave it to us. And it used to be a love hotel, so there were various rooms with beds still left in them. Of course, we always went there at night, so we generally hung out in the lobby with our lights and such, just chatting about this and that. And although it was a bit creaky, there was a sofa there too. Usually there were 4 or 5 of us, and it was the perfect hangout for kids wanting to get up to some trouble. But the high schoolers who used to hang out there before us were a rough bunch, so nobody else ever approached it. It was perfect for us. So one day, 5 of us, including me, were hanging out in the lobby. It started drizzling outside, and then the dumbass Shiro was like, "Aren't there any toilets?" Normally we just went outside to pee in the grass, but because it was raining, he apparently didn't want to go out. Wasn't it behind that door?" one of my friends said, pointing to a door at the rear of the lobby with his torch. "Ah, but there's no water," I said. Not a problem, Shiro replied, and then he disappeared with his torch in hand. There it is. We heard his dumb voice somewhere in the distance. However, 10 minutes passed, and he still hadn't come back. Then 20 minutes passed. Of course, by this point we were curious, so one of my friends got up to check. "Hey, is it stuck or something?" But when he opened the door, his face went pale. "Hey, Shiro's not here, man." He wasn't there. "I said he's not here. Come and have a look for yourself," he said. So we all went over and opened the door. Inside was a room that looked like an office. There were 2 rooms that were joined, but it was obvious at a glance that there was no toilet. And there wasn't even any other way in or out. Shiro took one of our only 2 torches with him. And again, it was clear that there was nowhere for someone to hide in there either. We searched everywhere. The lockers, behind the desks, etc. But in the end, we never found Shiro. The situation was so strange that it made us all sick to our stomachs. But we decided for now that we wouldn't say anything about it to anyone. and it's a little rich coming from someone like me, but Shido's home environment wasn't exactly the best either. So even though he never came home, they didn't even put out a missing persons request for him. In the end, the case was treated as a runaway, and Shido just straight up disappeared. We never went back to that love hotel again either. After I graduated from high school, I couldn't stop thinking about what happened there. The thing that bothered me most wasn't his disappearance, but rather what he said just before that. There it is. For some reason, that scared the pants off me. A couple of years later, I just happened to run into one of my friends from that time while out and about in town. We caught up at a cafe and the topic naturally turned to that night. My friend told me that he heard from one of the older guys who used to hang out there why exactly that love hotel was abandoned in the first place. A chill ran down my spine. Apparently, several guests went missing while staying there. Nobody knew how exactly they disappeared, but that was more than enough. After telling me that, my friend looked down at his lemon tea, which was now nothing but ice, and mixed his straw around in it. He'd broken out in a cold sweat, so I grabbed his shoulder and shook him. "Hey, what's up?" Then he started recalling what happened that night, in detail, from when Shido first asked about the toilet. "I remember I was closest to the door that Shido went through," he said. "After he closed it, I heard this really quiet voice saying, 'There it is,' right?" All the blood drained from his face, but then he continued. "That wasn't Shido's voice." I felt as though several years' worth of goosebumps all hit me at once. A huge thank you and shout out to this week's Cummy tier members, Scarly and Emerald. It's thanks to your support, along with everyone else, that I'm able to keep doing this show, so thank you very much. Don't forget to check out Kowabana Volume 16, out right now, and check out our merchandise store at kowabana-shop.fourthwall.com. And if you'd like to chat about this week's stories, come and join us in the Kowabana Discord. You can find that link in the description or on kowabana.net. You can also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/TaraADevlin for exclusive bonus stories and extras, or our YouTube channel at youtube.com/KowabanaJapan for all sorts of Japanese horror you won't find anywhere else. Thanks guys, stay safe, and I'll see you again next time for even more Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every week. You can also join our Patreon for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.